Thank you very much for coming. It's kind of unusual. We don't usually do this kind of thing, and I've not experienced at it, but I'll explain. There's a handout, and we'll give it to everyone as soon as I've made my initial remarks. I was going to hand it out ahead of time, but someone advised me you'd all read instead of listening to me, so I'm going to do this and then hand it out to you. The reason I've come, I'm running for Congress. I've tried to discuss the issues with my opponent. There are some serious issues facing our country, and he and I represent entirely different philosophical and political views as to what direction our country should go. I'm not going to take the opportunity to politic about that difference today, because that's not why I asked you to come here. I know that it is a general axiom in politics that if your opponent says something about you that's not true or disparaging, you really ought to let it go by. If you counter it, why, people hear it again. But we have a little different situation in this campaign, because my opponent's based his entire campaign, as far as we can tell, somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million worth of media on one issue, which is to diminish my personal reputation and personal integrity rather than discussing the issues. And it's come to the point where I think I have to say something about it, and I don't need to worry about repeating the lies, because anybody that's got a television set or a radio has heard it all anyway. So I'm going to read this, or read parts of it, and explain what I mean. I'm going to be listing the statements that Mr. DeFazio is making in his media campaign. If these statements are true, I won't vote for myself, and I should not be elected to public office. If these statements are not true, he should not be elected to public office. That place is occupied by a man with a PhD from Caltech, 2 veterinarians, and 3 students of nuclear engineering at Oregon State. I've published research work that is respected throughout the world, and I've worked for my country in defense, energy, and medicine. That is described, we are described, as living on a survivalist compound. And are shills who have sold our scientific integrity to ExxonMobil. And about the money for oil, this goes on and on throughout this thing. I'll tell you what about that. You know that I've worked on global warming, and I started because the Wall Street Journal asked me to write their lead editorial the day Gore was signing, when he was vice president. Gore was signing the Kyoto Accords, an accord involving energy rationing. They asked me to write their lead editorial that day, and I did. And the environs immediately said that I'd been paid by Big Oil to write the editorial. That was 12 years ago. So I decided that I'd never gotten anything from Big Oil. They're not interested in my biochemistry. So I decided that I'd be very careful about this. And since that time, I've never even accepted an honorarium to speak on this subject. When I'm offered a speech and asked to be paid an honorarium, I don't even take the honorarium, I just give the speech. Not one dime from oil or the energy industries has ever passed through my research institute, my personal hands, or anything involved with me. And he knows that. But I asked the press, let me ask you a question. Suppose that Art Robin, I'm not saying this, don't get me wrong. Suppose I were to tell everybody that Pete DeFazio signed the medical care bill because they gave him $500,000 in cash in a suitcase under the table. Would you go to me and ask me to justify what I've said? Of course you would. And if you found that that was a lie, what would you think of me? I think you need to ask these same questions. Politics is one thing. This stuff is beyond the pale. He doesn't believe that everybody will decide I live on a survivalist compound. He just wants to make them nervous. He doesn't believe that he can tell everybody in Eugene that I have a long record as a shill, where I sell my scientific integrity for money. He doesn't think most people will believe that, but if he tells it enough, people will say, I don't know about this guy Robinson. I don't think I'll take a chance. He doesn't believe I'm a racist, but if you throw mud, some of it sticks. In my opinion, this mud should stick to him. And in any case, those are the statements he's being made, and that's what I have to say. And I could go on and on, but you don't need me to do that. I think this is the kind of thing that needs to be supported. It's a press conference, because I think this is the kind of thing that needs to be sorted out by our media and our press. It is their goal to look at people like me who have entered the public realm, people like Pete DeFazio's in the public realm, and look at things like this and find the truth. The truth is what I live by. You know, I'm a scientist. I'll tell you something. If a graduate student in any department I've ever served in had made one of those statements or something comparable in a scientific subject and had been found not to be true, he wouldn't have received a degree and be out of science. That would be the way it is. That's the world I live in. I don't mind a bunch of mudslinging in politics, but this has gotten too much. And I see it every day, on and on and on and on in the media. And if you preach a lie long enough, the people will believe it. I've been trying to get this guy to debate, and you know the issue. Will you debate by ordinary debating rules where each person has time to talk and you can question each other, and there's time to present evidence and reasoned argument? That's the debating that college and high school students do. And Pete's refused to do that. Instead, he challenged me to 4 forums, and I've gone to 2 of those forums, and I'm going to 2 more on the 18th. They're his events, his people, but that's okay, they're fun, I don't mind them. But he has refused throughout this contest to walk into a room with me where we can ask each other questions under ordinary debating rules and have time to present evidence and reasoned argument. Now, outside of the campaign, and I mentioned this at the end of this article, I'll tell you, whether you're in politics or not, when you stand in a public place, especially if you spend over $500,000 doing it, and you shout statements like this about any man, you have a moral obligation to stand in a public place under ordinary debating rules and face that man and let him ask you questions, you ask him questions, and you debate the issues before you. It is not morally right in any forum to make these kind of statements about any man and then not have the courage and intestinal fortitude to stand in public and discuss them with him. That's a moral question. You decide. If you want someone to represent you with my views, vote for me. If you don't, don't. But I'm an honorable man. I have a reputation for integrity in science, and I've had a career in which many people have admired what my colleagues, and my family have done. And I detest the idea that a man will spend upwards of $1 million on TV, radio, and writing, and on the internet with the express purpose of destroying my personal reputation rather than discussing the issues of this campaign.